The Haunted Forest. Chapter 1. The Legend. In the remote village of Elder Tree, nestled at the edge of a dense, foreboding forest, tales of a curse had been passed down through generations. The elders spoke of strange occurrences and unexplained disappearances that plagued the village. The forest, known as Blackwood, was said to be haunted by vengeful spirits, remnants of a forgotten tragedy. Villagers avoided it at all costs, especially after sunset when the forest seemed to come alive with dark energy. Chapter 2. The Dare. On a chilly autumn night, a group of 5 teenagers gathered around a bonfire in the village square. There was Jack, the adventurous leader, Emily, the skeptic, Sarah, the storyteller, Tom, the cautious one, and Lily, the curious newcomer. The crackling fire illuminated their faces as they exchanged ghost stories and tales of the haunted forest. "Come on, it's just a bunch of old superstitions," Emily scoffed. "I bet there's nothing out there." Jack's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Why don't we find out for ourselves? Let's go into Blackwood and prove that there's nothing to be afraid of." The others hesitated, but the thrill of the dare and the promise of an adventure soon won them over. Armed with flashlights and a map, they set off into the dark forest, determined to uncover the truth. Chapter 3. Into the Darkness. As they ventured deeper into Blackwood, the tall, gnarled trees seemed to close in around them, blocking out the moonlight. An eerie silence blanketed the forest, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over the group. "Maybe this wasn't such a good idea," Tom muttered, glancing around nervously. "Relax, we're fine," Jack replied confidently. "Just stick together, and we'll be out of here in no time." Suddenly, a chilling whisper echoed through the trees. "Leave while you still can." The group froze, their hearts pounding. They exchanged fearful glances, unsure if they had imagined the voice or if it was something more sinister. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "We need to get out of here," Lily urged, clutching her flashlight tightly. Chapter 4. The First Disappearance. Panic set in as they tried to find their way back, but the forest seemed to shift and change, disorienting them. The path they had taken had vanished, replaced by a maze of identical trees. Shadows darted between the trunks, and the temperature continued to drop. "We're lost," Emily admitted, her voice tinged with fear. Jack's bravado faltered. "Stay close. We can't afford to get separated." But it was too late. As they trudged through the undergrowth, Lily suddenly let out a scream. The others turned to see her being dragged into the darkness by an unseen force. Her flashlight fell to the ground, casting an eerie glow on the scene. "Lily!" Tom shouted, rushing forward, but she was gone. The only sound was the echo of her screams fading into the distance. Chapter 5. The Descent into Madness. The loss of Lily shattered their confidence. The remaining 4 pressed on, driven by a desperate need to escape the forest's malevolent grasp. As the hours passed, their fear turned to paranoia. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, seemed to herald another unseen threat. Sarah began to mutter to herself, her eyes wide with terror. "They're watching us. They're always watching." "Snap out of it, Sarah," Jack snapped, his own fear barely concealed. "We need to stay focused." But the forest had other plans. Strange noises filled the air, whispers, laughter, and the sound of footsteps that seemed to follow them no matter which direction they turned. Chapter 6. The Cabin. Just when they thought all hope was lost, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin hidden among the trees. The sight of it filled them with a mixture of relief and dread. It seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, but it was their only chance of shelter. "We have to go inside," Tom insisted. "It's our only option." Reluctantly, they entered the cabin. The air inside was thick with the smell of decay, and the floorboards creaked beneath their feet. The walls were covered in strange symbols, etched into the wood with what looked like blood. "Look at this," Emily said, pointing to a dusty diary on a table. "Maybe it can tell us what happened here." Jack picked up the diary and began to read aloud. The entries detailed the previous occupants' descent into madness, their encounters with the forest's dark presence, and their desperate attempts to escape. Chapter 7: The Final Stand. As Jack read the final entry, a sense of dread washed over them. The cabin was alive, and it hungered for new souls. The forest's malevolent force had trapped them, just as it had trapped so many before. Suddenly, the cabin door slammed shut, and the windows shattered. Shadows emerged from the walls, taking on twisted, nightmarish forms. The group huddled together, their fear reaching a fever pitch. "We have to fight back," Jack yelled, grabbing a piece of broken wood as a makeshift weapon. But their efforts were futile. One by one, the shadows claimed them, dragging them into the darkness. Their screams echoed through the forest, leaving behind only a chilling silence. Chapter 8: The Aftermath. Days later, the villagers found the abandoned cabin, empty and undisturbed. The teenagers were never seen again, but the legend of Blackwood Forest grew stronger. The villagers continued to whisper about the curse, warning future generations to stay away from the haunted forest. And deep within the forest, the cabin waited, its hunger never truly satisfied. The Abandoned Cabin. Chapter 1: The Legend. In the shadow of Blackwood Forest, the small village of Eldertree thrived in the face of adversity. Generations of villagers had lived and worked here, and despite the forest's sinister reputation, life in Eldertree continued. The haunted forest had become a place of legend, whispered about in hushed tones, and serving as the backdrop for countless ghost stories. Among the village's oldest residents, the name Blackwood invoked a sense of dread and reverence. They spoke of strange lights, echoing voices, and figures that lurked just beyond sight. Chapter 2: The Lone Hiker. Years later, a lone hiker named Alex found himself drawn to the mystique of Blackwood Forest. A seasoned adventurer with a thirst for the unknown, Alex had heard the tales of the haunted forest and the abandoned cabin that lay within its depths. Curiosity, combined with a sense of defiance, compelled him to explore the place that had terrified so many. Armed with a backpack, a map, and a sturdy walking stick, Alex set out on his journey one crisp autumn morning. The forest was as dark and foreboding as the legends described. Towering trees with gnarled branches cast long shadows, and the undergrowth was thick and tangled. Despite the unease that settled over him, Alex pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. Chapter 3: The Discovery. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the forest. Just as Alex was about to turn back, he stumbled upon a clearing. There, hidden among the trees, stood the abandoned cabin. It was a dilapidated structure, its wooden walls weathered and overgrown with ivy. Despite its state of disrepair, the cabin seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. As Alex approached, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end, and a cold shiver ran down his spine. He hesitated at the threshold, but the encroaching darkness left him with little choice. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. Chapter 4: Nightfall. The interior of the cabin was dimly lit by the fading light seeping through the cracked windows. Dust particles danced in the air, and the floorboards creaked under Alex's weight. The cabin was sparsely furnished, with only a few pieces of old, rotting furniture scattered about. Despite the musty smell of decay, Alex felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if he had been there before. As night fell, Alex decided to take refuge in the cabin. He unrolled his sleeping bag in a corner and lit a small lantern to keep the darkness at bay. But as the hours passed, strange noises began to fill the air. At first, they were faint, the sound of footsteps outside, the rustling of leaves, and the distant hoot of an owl. But soon, they grew louder and more insistent. Chapter 5. The Diary. Unable to sleep, Alex began to explore the cabin. In the main room, he discovered an old, dusty diary hidden in a drawer. The cover was worn, and the pages were yellowed with age. Curiosity piqued. He opened the diary and began to read. As Alex read the diary, he became engrossed in the entries. The diary belonged to a woman named Emma, who lived in the cabin with her family many years ago. The entries described their daily life, the joys and hardships they faced in the remote area. One entry caught Alex's attention. It described a hidden treasure buried somewhere near the cabin. Emma had written about her father's adventures and the clues he left behind to find the treasure. Alex's heart raced with excitement as he realized that he might be able to find the treasure himself. He spent the next few days deciphering the clues in the diary, exploring the area around the cabin. Each clue led him closer to the hidden treasure. Finally, after a long and exhausting search, he found a small wooden chest buried beneath an old oak tree. Inside the chest, he discovered gold coins, old jewelry, and a letter from Emma's father explaining the significance of the treasure. Alex couldn't believe his luck. He carefully packed the treasure and the diary and made his way back to civilization. The discovery of the treasure not only brought him financial relief, but also a sense of connection to the past and the people who had lived in the cabin before him. Story 3. The Cursed Artifact. The haunted forest and its abandoned cabin had long been the subject of ghost stories and urban legends. These tales captured the imagination of people far and wide, and among those drawn to the mystery was a group of seasoned paranormal investigators. This team was known for its thoroughness and fearlessness, often venturing into the most haunted places to uncover the truth behind supernatural occurrences. One chilly autumn morning, the team gathered at the edge of the forest, armed with the latest technology and a burning curiosity to uncover the truth behind the legends. The leader of the group, a man named Samuel, was a veteran investigator with years of experience under his belt. His team consisted of 3 other members: Sarah, a tech expert with an eye for detail; David, a historian with an extensive knowledge of folklore; and Emily, a sensitive with an uncanny ability to perceive the unseen. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The trees seemed to close in around them, and an eerie silence enveloped the team. Undeterred, they pressed on, guided by a map David had found in an old library, which purportedly led to the heart of the forest. After hours of trekking through the dense underbrush, they stumbled upon the ancient tree described in the map. Its gnarled roots twisted and turned, partially obscuring a hidden chamber beneath. With a sense of foreboding, they began to excavate the entrance, eventually revealing a narrow passageway leading down into the earth. The team descended into the chamber, their flashlights casting long shadows on the damp walls. At the center of the chamber, they found a stone pedestal upon which rested a mysterious artifact, a relic from a forgotten time. The artifact was an intricately carved amulet, radiating an ominous power that sent chills down their spines. As they examined the artifact, the air grew heavy with an oppressive presence. Visions of the forest's dark history and the tormented souls trapped within began to plague their minds. Samuel saw glimpses of ancient rituals performed under the cover of darkness, while Sarah felt the weight of countless restless spirits pressing down on her. David's historian's mind was filled with the knowledge of the terrible events that had transpired in the forest, and Emily's sensitive abilities were overwhelmed by the sheer malevolence emanating from the artifact. It didn't take long for them to realize that the artifact was the source of the curse that haunted the forest. Its power was growing stronger with each passing moment, and they knew they had to act quickly if they were to escape its clutches. Desperate to leave the forest and free themselves from the artifact's malevolent grip, they tried to retrace their steps back to the surface. However, the forest seemed to have other plans. The trees closed in around them, their branches intertwining to form an impenetrable barrier. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread settled over the team. They could feel the artifact's grip tightening, drawing them into its nightmarish embrace. Hours turned into days as they struggled to find a way out, but the forest seemed to conspire against them. Their supplies dwindled, and their strength waned. The artifact's power grew stronger, feeding off their fear and despair. One by one, the investigators began to succumb to the artifact's influence. Sarah, overwhelmed by the visions, was the first to fall. She wandered off into the forest, her mind lost to the tormented souls that haunted the trees. David, his knowledge of the forest's dark history weighing heavily on him, was next. He became convinced that the only way to break the curse was to perform an ancient ritual he had read about in the diary, but his efforts were in vain. Samuel and Emily were the last ones left, clinging to their dwindling hope as the forest's malevolence surrounded them. Emily, with her sensitive abilities, could sense the spirits whispering to her, their voices filled with anguish and desperation. She realized that the artifact was not just cursed, but also bound by the spirits of those who had died in the forest, trapped in eternal torment. Desperate for a way to break the curse, Samuel and Emily decided to use the amulet's power against itself. Emily focused her energies on reaching out to the spirits, hoping to communicate with them and understand the true nature of the curse. Samuel, meanwhile, studied the amulet, searching for any clues that might reveal how to sever its dark influence. After what felt like an eternity, Emily made contact with one of the spirits, a young girl named Alara, who had been sacrificed in a long-forgotten ritual. Through Alara, Emily learned that the only way to break the curse was to return the amulet to its original resting place, deep within the heart of the forest. The amulet had been stolen centuries ago, and its removal had unleashed the malevolent forces that now plagued the forest. With this newfound knowledge, Samuel and Emily set out on a perilous journey to find the amulet's resting place. The forest, sensing their intentions, did everything in its power to hinder their progress. Trees uprooted themselves, creating impassable barriers, and ghostly apparitions tried to lead them astray. But with Alara's guidance and their unwavering determination, they pressed on. Finally, they reached a clearing where an ancient stone altar stood, covered in moss and surrounded by twisted, gnarled trees. Emily placed the amulet on the altar, and as soon as it touched the stone, a blinding light engulfed the clearing. The oppressive presence that had weighed them down began to lift, and the spirits trapped in the forest were freed from their torment. Exhausted but relieved, Samuel and Emily watched as the forest slowly returned to its natural state. The trees no longer loomed menacingly, and the air was filled with the sounds of nature rather than the whispers of restless souls. They made their way back to the edge of the forest, leaving the haunted past behind. As they emerged from the forest, Samuel and Emily knew that they had not only uncovered the truth behind the legends, but had also freed countless souls from their suffering. Their experience would remain etched in their memories forever, a testament to the power of determination and the strength of the human spirit in the face of darkness. And so, the haunted forest and its cursed artifact became just another chapter in the annals of paranormal history, a story of triumph over malevolence and the enduring hope that light can always prevail over darkness. Thank you for listening to my stories. If you find it good, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.